Hello. In this clip from our Justia webinar, Converting Leads to Clients and Navigating the Critical Moments in Legal Consultation, Adam Boyd discusses multiple barriers that prevent leads from becoming effective conversions. If you want to see more Justia videos on law practice and legal marketing, be sure to subscribe to our channel.
By the way, Munger was an attorney before he became a full-time investor. There's no magic in what I'm going to share with you, just common sense, but it's not commonly practiced. It's going to sound incredibly elementary to some of you, but I want you to bear with me before we get to the structure. This is important. I've worked with a lot of people across a lot of practice areas, and I have to bring it up because I see it repeated. One of the first things is that attorneys spend too much time in the wrong areas on their consult. When we get into our structure, you'll kind of see where I push people to spend time. But when they spend time on the wrong areas, they quietly internally panic about the amount of time they have left to wrap up the consult. You all can name every single one of these people. Most of you probably know where they went to law school. But 50% of the country can't name more than one of them. Why is anyone going to care where you clerked or where you went to law school or where you started your career? Fewer than 5% of the people you talk to will have any frame of reference on that. So where do you spend time focusing on the consult? I want you to think about this because this may be your big takeaway. Is it your background? Is it the fact of the case? Is it building a relationship with somebody who may want to spend a lot of money to hire you? Is it understanding the impact on the potential client? Finding out what's important to them? Telling them their options? Understanding what they've considered and tried? Educating them in the law? Arguing with them over their do-it-yourself legal education? Routinely, when attorneys talk to me about their consult, they're worried people will talk too much or take up too much time because they have so much to do and they're billing by the hour. That makes sense. But first, we have to think about where time goes on a consult. People who are in front of you are there for a reason. They've already chosen to meet with you. They've vetted you enough to have you talk to them. It's not the time to tell them about where you clerked when they're not going to understand anything about that judge or that court. So I want you to stop. If you think about this, stop spending so much time sharing about your background. Most people don't care. And I'm going to get into how we connect a little bit. That's focused on you when your potential clients want you to talk about them and hear about them. Most people, and I'll say this again, want to be heard and understood. Psychologists will tell you that people trust you in proportion to how much you know about them, not how much they know about you, even when they're sitting down to hire you. Harvard Business Review did a survey. It was probably 20 or 25 years ago, and they asked small business owners, what's your biggest concern when you hire an outsider to help you? And they said routinely that they won't understand my business. The consult of the time to be listening and thus building trust. The more that you have your potential clients talking, the better off you are, assuming it's a case you want. Because if they're talking, interestingly enough, they're connecting with you. You have to create the space for that. Second, a lot of attorneys are looking at the clock because there's so much on their plate. I talk to them about it. I hear it when I review their consults. They're in a hurry. Yes, you have to bill. Yes, you have cases to get to. Yes, you have administrative tasks. Yes, you have people in the office who need your help. Yes, you have a life outside of billable hours. Also, yes, your potential clients want to feel important. The more time they receive, the more important they feel, just like children. They also, like kids, feel it if you're rushed. When attorneys rush consults, they miss things that matter. Nuances, phrases, changes in body language, tone, pitch. As a result, close rates drop. We've seen this. They miss tells in the conversation. If you play poker, you can see tells. There are tells in conversations because they're rushing. We've seen bumps in conversion rates just because attorneys added 5 or 10 minutes to the consult they ran. That may be your big takeaway today. One thing we've seen, the more consults or intake specialists run in a given day, the worse their conversion ratio. This was a research study done on, they put EKG monitors mapped into brains, and they said, what happens in days without breaks? You can see at the top, the stress build on the brain when there are no breaks between meetings. Your ability to perform is contingent upon you having space and enough time to rest between consults, and stacking them up is not the way to do it. The stress of knowing you've got another meeting in 10 minutes is going to negatively impact your conversions. Okay. Now, Let's talk about connection. Attorneys miss opportunities to connect with potential clients. Other than observation, I know because of Legal Consumer Legal Trends report in 2018, they said clients routinely felt 33% of the time they felt urgency, but only 15% of attorneys perceived client urgency as part of the experience. And you can see how it goes. Frustration, how the clients felt versus how the attorneys felt. We got a little Q&A here. I will get please save your questions for the end. I will talk about the Zoom consult versus the in-person. Okay. So we'll come back to that. This tells you there's a stark difference in what the attorneys are perceiving as important or occurring with the client and what the client's actually experiencing. Right? Now, why does this happen? Attorneys miss this because they aren't intentional about engaging and connecting. Sometimes people come to you with a problem that you've seen every day the last 5 years. Old hat to you, even if it's brand new to them. The temptation is to treat it the way an ER doctor has to treat a bullet wound. They have to get to work and detach emotionally. But people need to feel connection with you, meaning they want more than competence. They want to feel like the attorney cares. When attorneys attack the problem right away and blow past empathy, they appear like an emotional robot. If I have to choose between two attorneys who appear equally competent, I'm going with the one who's a little more human. Okay. Empathy matters. Wanting to help people isn't empathy. It's just wanting to help. Your potential clients, by and large, need to feel the difference. I've seen people call attorneys, open the call with having lost a loved one, a child was taken, some terrible situations going on, they're losing their business, and the attorney jumps right to the fact of the case. No pause, no empathy. It's ER doctor syndrome. They've got to separate themselves from the emotion because it'd be exhausting to be so engaged. I get it. But prospects need to feel the connection. Here's a quick example. Potential client calls in and says, I just had my time. This is an immigration issue. Son taken by INS. The attorney goes to, when did this happen and in what jurisdiction? Now, a lot of times you feel really strong, like, hey, I can solve this problem. I can get after it. But what if it went like this? Hey, I just had my son taken by INS. What if the attorney said, God, I'm so sorry. That must be really hard for you. Yes, you're going to open yourself to a lot of emotion, but it's what has to happen. Okay. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip my story about a heart incident and get to some of the other really important material here. You can't get impatient with potential clients. Okay. They don't know what you know. They don't know how to hire an attorney. Usually you can't get frustrated with them because they're going to feel it if you do, and it'll cost you business. You're the only attorney they're talking to today, 99% of the time, even if you talk to 10 people just like them. I've seen attorneys get upset when the potential client says, I need, or I heard, or I read somewhere else, someone said, I saw a YouTube video. In some areas of the law, people are going to try to DIY it, right? Happens all the time. The thing to not do is get frustrated and check out or argue with them. It's fitting as their attorney to argue for them. But when they're trying to find out if you can help them, it's not the time to tell them they're an idiot or they're wrong. And very often, even if you're not saying you're an idiot, your tone says you're an idiot. I've got these degrees behind me. I've been doing this for a long time. How dare you quote suits in here? It breaks connection, right? Simply spend time connecting and don't get a defensive if they've done a little homework, even if it comes from Law and Order. All right. This is a big one. See this all the time. Someone comes to an attorney with a problem. The attorney then drops into legal terms, which the other person has zero awareness of. I remember my brother was in law school and I was in high school. He kept talking about ports. And I was thinking about the flourless chocolate cake at the little market down the street. No clue what you're talking about. We've actually encouraged intake specialists to stop saying, what sort of matter is this? Because no one outside of the legal world uses matter in that context. So we have intake specialists say, tell me what's going on. Can you share with me, why'd you call? Because that's how people talk and think. Attorneys also like to talk about historical cases and all the ways a case could play out, which adds ambiguity to your potential client. and have ambiguity is the last thing they want when they come to you. They get confused and they have no idea what to do with the mini primer you've just given them on a state law, towards, or the justice system. Analysis slows the brain down. Potential clients begin to work through all the information you've given them, and they're trying to determine, where in my mental closet do I put this? It actually impedes the process of winning a lot of clients. Not all of them, not under all circumstances, but I want you to look at what Daniel Kahneman came up with in his research on how people think. He puts it into two categories: fast, which is intuitive, gut-based, and emotional, and slow, which is deliberate, logical, based on process. Attorneys, when they educate, push people into slow thinking, leading meetings to end with, "Thanks for all that information." How do I know? I've got an attorney who has only non-attorneys running consults. They actually convert at a higher rate than the attorneys did. They tell stories, they ask questions, they listen, and they're winning new clients just at an incredible clip. They don't educate because it'd be illegal to do so. Potential clients aren't necessarily looking to be wowed by your legal knowledge, at least not right away. Many just want to be understood. I've said it before. I worked for an immigration firm, and the intake team would say, "Do you want to set up a time to meet with the attorney?" This was after they'd gotten some basic information. And routinely people would say, "You haven't heard my story yet." They needed to be heard, and this is telling. Okay. Fourth big mistake. I'm going to guess assumptions people make keep a lot of you in business, especially when it comes to contracts. That and the fact that no one reads them. But assumptions wreck communication, especially in a consult. Most people assume they know what the other person wants or is looking for. Why else would they be with an attorney, you think? Assumptions. Here's a quick story on one. One of my clients was a criminal defense attorney. He's meeting with a potential client. The guy's a little bit older. He's in dirty clothes. He works what's called a yard job. So his hands are dirty. He's making minimum wage, maybe a little bit older. He'd been in prison for 15 years. Okay. So my client starts thinking, this guy doesn't have the money. It's going to be a $50,000 defense. He's thinking, there's no way. I can't help this guy. Why am I here? And I want you to think, when you start thinking that, you're not engaged. Somewhere along the line, the potential client said, "I tell you what, man, I got $350,000 in the bank. I'll pay you $100,000 if you can guarantee I won't go back to prison." Now, my client didn't make that guarantee, didn't take the case, said, "Hey, I can't make that guarantee." But it was a wake-up call to him that he was making an assumption. In this case, it was on money, which we'll deal with later. But he'd made a big assumption that really got in the way here. And for a lot of us, we're running around with assumptions all the time. Most attorneys don't know what a potential client wants. And I know you're saying, why are they in front of me? They clearly know. And that's okay, but I just want you to ask some questions. It's easy to assume that a potential client wants an attorney with your background, your experience, your clerkship. That is one type of assumption. There's another type of assumption when you assume the potential client gets what's at stake and is fully motivated to take the action necessary to deal with it. How often have you been in a consult and thought, this person's in a lot of trouble? And that they had to take action right now, but they didn't. Like, they didn't get it. They didn't even seem to be as motivated as you were to solve the problem. Something didn't click. You and they missed each other. There was a breakdown. And you assumed that they got what was at stake for them, what risks they were taking. You can call it pattern recognition, experience, or something else. You can see in your head, like a movie, the consequence that they don't take action. But if they don't discuss it with you, for them, it likely doesn't exist. Okay? They have to talk about it out loud with you. Sometimes that's what's needed for their risks to become real to them. It's a mistaken belief that we don't have to discuss everything. And I'm just giving you a couple rules here. Take nothing for granted and ask about everything, because your competition won't. It also goes the other way. You assume that you get what's at stake for them, and you rush past something that they need you to hear and that you need to hear. Maybe you don't ask the questions you know that you need to, because you assume you know what they want: attorney from the consult, why this case matters, what's on the line, how they feel about money, how much they have. All of those things are important for us to dig into. Okay? As a result, if you don't dig into that, you miss something that's really important, some small tell, a key detail, all because of assumptions. Next big mistake before we move on to structures, believing that it's all about money. Okay. I haven't seen It's All About the Benjamins, but it seemed like a great fit for this slide. You probably agree that our lives are results of our beliefs. All of you probably believe that hard work pays off and education is important because of the line of work you've chosen and where you are in your career. I'd put money on that because of the choices you made, this legal career and the work it takes to get here and more. Routinely, when I talk to attorneys, and I've said this before, they say things like, well, they're not qualified because they can't afford me, or they don't have the money, or my price is too high, or they wanted something cheaper. And that's what they think about. But when attorneys believe this, it leads to certain behaviors. Maybe they check out and they don't really listen. If you're in a relationship with somebody, you know when they're not listening, and we all know we've been guilty of it when dealing with a potential client. Maybe we prematurely offer payment plans because we believe they don't have the money. Maybe we discount, and now we're doing work at a lower rate than really worth. They missed opportunities to move things forward. Yes, you've been burned when people push back on your fees. I get it. I've been there. I sell professional services for a living. But what if you believed that people had the money and were simply looking for the justification to pay you, that they wanted to trust you enough to pay you? Everyone who comes to you, by and large, has multiple streaming services, an iPhone or an Android, and those things, when we realize what they're really cost, it's pretty staggering. And they've probably got a pretty big flat screen TV, and a lot of them eat out regularly. Not all of your clients all the time, but it's there. People have money, and they've just got to decide how to spend it. If you believe this, how would you behave differently in consults? So a few rules. Don't assume that they can't afford you. Don't prematurely offer payment plans, and don't assume too soon that they need a payment plan. I see another little red box up there on the Q&A. Please hold that because I'll lose my train of thought and won't be able to get back into this. Put a pin in that and we'll come back to it. I'm not saying everyone has the money. Trust me, I'm not saying that. But too often we assume they don't have the money. I'm not saying spend time with people who aren't qualified. Some aren't. I'm not saying to never offer payment plans or discounts. I am saying that you probably don't want to be in the business of chasing fees, and you can avoid it at times if we have a different structure, which I'll walk you through. When we've adjusted behavior regarding money, we've seen some pretty stunning results. So here's some of the mistakes. Avoid spending time in your consult on the wrong things or not giving yourself enough time. If your consult is under, I've seen as short as 15 to 20 minutes, unless you're just knocking them down because you've got a factory, I think you need a minimum of 30. Sometimes it's 45 or more. I see people not really put any emphasis on building connection. They overeducate, they assume, and they really believe it's all about money. All right. I want you to think about this equation. Confusing jargon from an attorney when the people you're talking to aren't attorneys. Not building a relationship equals they're going to default to what they can understand, which is your price. You appear expensive because they don't understand what you're talking about. They don't have a relationship with you.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did enjoy it, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more videos on law practice and legal marketing. See you in our next clip.